Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed it's a pleasure for me to be able to be here, sharing this Veterans Day luncheon, to be at the service at 11 o'clock today outside in the square. That was wonderful. I want to thank the VFW, the American Legion, for their support, and for all the veterans that are here, their families and loved ones that have given them the support over the years. As I'm sitting here listening to Bob, obviously, he's taken the thrust of my whole speech. So, as those of you who know him, he has a tendency of talking and talking and talking and talking. So it was nice having lunch with you, and thank you very much. Obviously, I learned a lot of things today. One of the things I know that I could not ever work for Ohio Ordnance because I can't sing. So I didn't know it was a requirement to be hired. Before I say a few words, obviously, and I want to do this, obviously that, Bob makes a big impact for his employees in this community and what he has done, what he has given back, his commitment to serving veterans and people in the community. And because of that, and I made his short list of heroes. That was wonderful. But I would like to give Bob something. Never mind, I will not give him anything. No. Well, I know it's about that. Okay, but I want to do this for you. Okay, because I can't do anything else with it, so I have to give it to you. I can't take it back, and I already paid for it. No. Bob, do you have that? Let me just. So if you just come up here for a second, it's just, it isn't much, but I want to give it to, so that I want to make sure that it's framed and put into it. Anyway, here, Bob, this is Bob Land. He's a true patriot. So one of the things about Veterans Day, and it had been mentioned before, and I recently wrote a book, and I think this kind of puts it in perspective, and the name of the book was River Horse, and the author, William Least Heat Moon, wrote within this book that our physical components change every 7 years, so that our brains continuously pass memories off onto a complete stranger. Who we have been is just now a fellow ghostly traveler. If memory were total and complete, perhaps we would be one person from start to finish, but forgetfulness cuts us off from who we have been, so that hourly we are reborn. Now, I tell you that in context that I am in my late 7th decade of creating memories, and although I may not be the same person that I was, gentlemen, ladies, when I was walking in the rice paddies in Vietnam, or the last time I wore a uniform in the National Football League. It's not that I have forgotten what had taken place and who I am, but usually when I have come to realize that it's my audience that has forgotten who I am and what I have done and how I single-handedly won those 4 Super Bowls for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I say that in context only because of the fact that, as had been mentioned before, and one of the things, and especially I've experienced not only from a lot of veterans, but also from my Vietnam brothers, is that the stories and the experiences that we have had been repressed and not to be shared, or hadn't been shared with family and or kids and or relatives. Because through the years that I've been around, it's that, yeah, my dad never talked about it. My dad never shared those stories. My dad, I don't know what he had gone through or what he had experienced. And the only way for younger generations to understand what had taken place in World War II, what had taken place in Korea, what had taken place in Vietnam, what had taken place then thereafter now, in the Middle East, are by the stories that we tell them, and by able to share those experiences, good or bad, peacetime, wartime, no matter what we may have done. So it becomes a very important part of honoring our military, and more importantly, those who have served, being able to share those stories so that they don't forget what had taken place and what had happened. Now, I came back from my experience in Vietnam to a high-profile industry by playing professional football. And because of that, I became a story, because everybody wanted to know what it was like. I became a story within those regards of what had taken place. And so, at least for me, it was a catharsis, and I got a chance to talk about those experiences and come up with reasons why that I suppressed, what had happened that otherwise we don't think about and or feel and or talk about if it isn't asked. So one of the things that I found out like today, as I had mentioned at the service at 11 o'clock, was that sitting here, Chardon, reminded me of where I grew up in Wisconsin. And sometimes you miss this community, and you miss the chance of seeing and being with people that I experienced. I mean, growing up in a small town, I remember the parades that we had on Memorial Day and on the 4th of July, and on Veterans Day, we even had a parade. And my uncles who had served in Korea specifically, but who played in the city band, and we'd be able to follow them and be a part of that whole experience as it ended up at times at my dad's bar. And so, but those were experiences that we had, and sometimes I feel envious for people who still get the chance to share them. Now I live in Pittsburgh in a big community, and you miss this camaraderie that you have. But I also know that I come into foreign territory, being a Pittsburgh Steeler, and so I just want to get a feeling of how many Steeler fans are, well, how many Brown fans are here? That's right. Yeah. So I'm just assuming the rest of you then are Steeler fans, but that's okay. And I always like to at least make mention of the fact that out of those 4 Super Bowls that I had won, I like to show Brown fans what a Super Bowl ring looks like. And I was very fortunate, and I was very fortunate to play through that period of time in the 70s that now allow us to wear those 4 Super Bowl rings from Super Bowls 9, 10, 13, and 14 back in 74, 75, 78, 79. Do you know how many Steeler fans it takes to change a light bulb? Just to change the subject here. Answer is 5. 1 to change a light bulb, the other 4 to talk about how great the 70s were. But you also have to understand, just as an aside, that having 4 Super Bowl rings poses a lot of problems to me. because no matter where I may go, it does raise a myriad of questions, such as I got from Bob. Well, geez, Rock, I mean, you got 4 Super Bowl rings. Do you change them every day? I mean, how do you decide which one to wear? I mean, which one's better than the other one? Which one do you like more than the other one? Well, I have to tell you in all honesty that this one that I wear on my right hand from Super Bowl 13, the second time that we did play the Dallas Cowboys, is the one that I wear all the time for various reasons. One happened to be the best game I played in. It was the only game that I scored a touchdown in. But the real reason I wear this ring is because it happens to be the largest and gaudiest and part of my story is the fact that Bob had made mention, and I came and I got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. My career throughout, my career was the greatest game I ever played in, and I have to tell you, because I think one of the things that you have to understand, the one business that we're all in, one of the reasons that we have served, one of the results of our people serving is that we establish a certain foundation in which we build this country on. And one of the building blocks of that foundation, and one of the really businesses that we're in is the hope business. Because ultimately, if you think about it, no man is an island. I mean, we didn't get to where we are today by ourselves. We got here because of someone, somebody, something. We got here because someone gave us a push, a kick, a shove. Someone opened a door. You got here because of a parent, an interested party. You got here because of a drill sergeant, a coach. You got here because of a teacher. Somehow we got here. And it's the impact that we have, that ability to create hope. And that hope starts somewhere, that little kernel of belief that we have, that we got a great country, we got a great community, we got great people, and we can really do something. Well, that kernel for me started with the greatest football game I ever had the opportunity to play in. I was 9 years old. I was playing Dickie Weisberger, my next door neighbor. Being born and raised in that small Midwestern town, as I had made mention, Appleton was for us Cheesettes. I mean, football was a big part of our lives, and Dickie and I had an extensive schedule. We did have home and away games. And this game was an away game for me, so of course I had to go across the street and pick up Dickie and play on his sideline. But what a game. I scored 51 touchdowns. Thank you very much. I gained a little over 500 yards rushing. More importantly, I shut him out. That's 357 to nothing. I crushed him. And it was the beginning for me of a belief system. Now, just because the fact Dickie was 5 shouldn't take anything away from him. He was a tough 5. You know that kind of kid. He was a big 5. But one of the things that Dickie and I shared as we grew up was the fact that both of us were too small, too short, too slow, and not big enough to play as we had gone on to be a competitor. But like any organization and any success, whether it be a fire team, a drill team, whether it be in business or at school or at home, there's always a catalyst. There's someone that pulls all those individuals together that we call a team and molds them into a belief and into a group. And because of the success that is created within that organization, you get recognized for your contribution to that success. And because of that, and I get a scholarship to go to the University of Notre Dame. And we had a brand new coach by the name of Ara Parsegian, who had come in from Northwestern now. It was many years ago. And I remember the first time that I had met him, and I walked in the first time that we got a chance. And he didn't have a whole lot of time to get a grip and a grasp of his new recruits, so the best that he could do was go through the files that had accumulated over the last several months. And he was going through the files, starting with A's, working his way down into the B's. All of a sudden, he did come to one, Rocky Bleier. And he started to read it. And the more he read, the bigger his eyes became, because he couldn't believe his good fortune. For you see, according to this kid, or to this profile, he was getting a kid that was a high school All-American, a 2-time All-State, 3-time All-Conference, gained 4,856 yards in his career, scored 89 touchdowns, had a 12-yard per carry average, punted, kicked off, returned punts, returned kicked offs. He said, it's the second coming. I mean, with a kid like this, I'm going to be able to change this program around in no time flat. I'm going to bring Notre Dame football back to the forefront. Well, unfortunately, reality cut in for him quite quickly when I walked through that doorway and met him for the first time. And from his position, that meeting went something like this. He said, no. I said, maybe. He said, you sure in the right building? I mean, the leprechaun tryouts are over there. He said, you can't be. He's just not big enough, fast enough to be able to play on this caliber. But 4 years later, hard work, dedication, commitment, national championship on our belt. Because of the success of that whole, you get recognized for your contribution. And I become captain of the team, and I get drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was the 417th person picked in the draft that year. I was a 16th round draft choice, but you have to understand, from my point of view, there were 17 rounds. Hey, at least I'm not the last guy picked. I got a chance to be able to make this team. People said, well, how'd you make the team? Remember who played for the Steelers in the 60s? Yeah, that's how come I made the team. And I played 11 to 12 games, and as the story goes, I got my draft notification, and within 48 hours after that notification, I was gone on the basic training, advanced infantry training, flew home, said hi, goodbye, flew over the Pacific, landed in South Vietnam, and was with the unit. 4.5 months later, takes back to where Bob had made mention. We were evac to help a sister company that was in trouble. And our responsibility was to get them out of the hot spot. By the time we got there, it was late at night. We pulled front and rear securities, had to carry their dead out of that, ran into an ambush, left them behind. Word was to leave the bodies, let's get out of here. And we're coming back 2 days later to retrieve our dead. Ethos of the military. No soldier left behind. So it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Found our location, open race paddy. All of a sudden, a machine gun opens up, and we're in a firefight. Find that position, my responsibility, get firepower on that spot, and get enough firepower with the 4 guys that were pinned down, get out. Lull in the action. And at that time, just as Bob had made mention, one of the things I've come to learn, or I suppose is this, that is most asked of me today, the question that is most asked of me today, isn't so much about, what's like playing in Super Bowls, or what is it like playing in a national championship, or the competition, but really now as time goes on, in those wee hours, after a long evening when the guys just get together, one of the questions is, what is combat really like? For you see, and you have to understand, there's no reference to that experience. We have reference to playing pickup sports. We can play baseball, football, in the streets, in the backyard, so you can kind of give a reference of what it may like playing on other venues. But what is it like being in combat? Because 1% of our population serves our country. And maybe a little less than 1% finds themselves in that mode of combat or serving, or what it's like. So there's no reference to that. Obviously, when people ask me that question, I have to tell you this somewhat with my tongue in my cheek, is my first thought is, well, obviously, they never had a Catholic education. For you have to understand, see, with 8 years of Notre Dame nuns, 4 years of Christian Brothers, 4 years of Holy Cross priests, I knew what combat was all about. For those who have been there, there's nothing more fearful than a good sister with a ruler in her hand and righteousness in her eyes, walking down that aisle looking right at you. But it was an experience that ultimately made me the person who I am today, as our education does. You know, for those good sisters, you know, taught me who I am. Oh no, as we have all been taught somewhere, because it was yes sister and no sister, which morphed into yes mom, no mom, yes dad, no dad, yes father, no father, yes brother, no brother, yes coach, no coach, yes sergeant, no sergeant, yes sir, no sir, yes dear, no dear. But one of the things that they did teach you is that they did teach you how to pray, because you would pray for days off, you would pray for good grades, you'd pray for snowy days, you'd pray for rainy days, you'd pray that you would win the game, you'd pray that you'd get an A on the test, you'd pray that someday that little redhead might like you. And then you'd pray that you come home safely from the war. But sometimes you have to be careful what you pray for, because it may come true. And you have to live then with what may happen. Because as we have gone through our wars over a period of time, you know, in World War I, if you got hit in the field in World War I, or in the Civil War, you had a 10% chance of being able to make it. Got a little bit better in World War I. World War II was about 50%. Vietnam, we got about a 33 1/3%. But today, our young soldiers today, that if they get hit, that a medic can get to them within an hour. They got a 90%, 98% chance of surviving. But then they have to live with the atrocities that have taken place over that period of time. So we have support systems. We have communities to be able to take care of the thousands of young soldiers today that'll come back with brain injuries, TBI, post-traumatic stress, soldiers that come back with Agent Orange out of Vietnam, or soldiers that now are aging and, you know, need to have care. And it falls on our shoulders. VA is overwhelmed, as we well know, with what has taken place, so a lot of it comes back in the communities. And communities like this, to be able to reach out and to support and to embrace the VFW and the American Legion and the Gold Mothers and all that care for our soldiers. And to be able to see all of you here as well and understand that becomes very important because it's part of the story that needs to be told. And we do a good job of doing that, telling the stories, living in what our experiences have been and what needs to be done. And it's true. And so there I was, in that rice paddy. And my 6th grade teacher appeared to me out of nowhere. I don't know where she came from, Sister Bleier. And all the stories that she had told us about the guys in World War II and Korea that were in that foxhole, and we find ourselves not only then in times of combat, but within our lives, of dedicating their lives, becoming priests, they'll build you a hospital, and so on. And then ultimately, there you are. There you are, and now it's up to you. And I stuttered to try to get it out, and the word priest got stuck, and I knew I wasn't going to do that. And all of a sudden, it was like, I'll build you a great hospital. Well, I knew that was going to happen, because the only thing I could think about was when I was growing up and playing hide and go seek. I mean, for those of you old enough, and couldn't find that one last person, and then you go around hollering "Ollie, Ollie," and free, and all bets were off. You could come in, and because I knew, and I think we have to know ourselves. When I knew if I came back, it would be like, well, things are pretty good now. I really didn't mean. I didn't have my fingers crossed. You know what I mean? So I think, okay, fine, we got to do something, and the only thing that we have is who we are. The only thing that we have is us. And so you have my life to do with what you want. Share the good times, not complain about the bad times. That's the best. So we got out of that rice paddy, we dropped back, and about 20 minutes later, the rest of that platoon came crawling in on their hands and knees, filled with mud and muck from those rice paddies, and we set up another defensive position. They got close enough to our perimeter to get a hand grenade come flying through the air, and it hit my commanding officer on the back, didn't go off, and it bounded towards where I was in a matter of seconds. I had to decide which way to jump, and as I got up, it blew up, and I was standing on top of it, and blew up to my right foot, knee, and thigh. And my first thought was, I made the promise once before, you didn't have to remind me. It wasn't like an imprimatur on it. I would have kept it until another platoon fought its way down and dragged us out. But we all have turning points, and I think this becomes the important thing. Turning points of what happens within our lives and where we want to go. You're in an aid station. IVs running in and out of your body, morphine drip, take the pain away. Those questions, I don't care whether you're there or someplace else, of why me, now what, where am I going to go? I had something, you took it away from me, where's my future? Come flowing through our minds as we question ourselves no matter what. And across from me was a young soldier who was a triple amputee. He lost his left arm and both legs. And every day that I was there, I was only there for 2-3 days. The aides would come and take him to therapy, and he'd grab that little trapeze that swung over his bed and swing his torso into a wheelchair, and they'd push him out, and he would make sure that he stopped at each and every bed on the way out. And he'd stop at my bed, and he'd go, "Hey, how you doing today? You know, you look better today than you did yesterday, because let me tell you this, yesterday, you look like shit." Now, we got some good docs here, they're going to take care of you, and we'll get you out of here, and I'll see you back in the real world one of these days. And I thought, wow, if anybody really could be embittered with their lot in life, would be that young soldier's, but yet he chose to make a difference, yet he chose to have an impact and change other people's perceptions. I got to Tokyo after there, had enough courage to ask my physician after a couple of weeks whether or not I'm going to be able to play that game of football again. Now, his response to that question was something like this, and I have to tell you. He goes, "Don't worry about it." He said, "You're going to have a normal life. You're going to be able to do the things that normal people do. Just don't expect to get back into the gridiron." He said, "Because of the fact you just won't have the strength nor the flexibility to do the things that are necessary to be a running back in the NFL." For you see, what he had formulated from his point of view, from his stream of information, was a perception about my ability. But as my authority figure, he just sucked that hope right out. It's an impact that we have every day of our lives to be able to touch and change people by our actions, our feelings, by what we say, or what kind of support that we give, correct or not, but it just sucked that hope out. 2 days later, I get a postcard in the mail, honest to God, a postcard. It's got 2 lines on it, said this: Rock, team's not doing well, we need you. Art Rooney, owner of the Steelers. Wow. Not that they needed me, that wasn't the case. That somebody cared, somebody reached out. And later on, fortunately, they bought me a couple years, they bought me time to be able to heal, and eventually I got a chance to be able to make the team and come back and play through that part of the 70s and win those, and be a part of the team that win 4 Super Bowls. But all of a sudden, as I think back on lives, the people that are touched, that touch you, the difference that is being made from an educational point of view, from an outside point of view, from a triple amputee to a postcard, the impact that it has on all of our lives. And each and every one of us can be that impact to our neighbors, to our young soldiers, to the youth that is growing up, to those who have served. So for all of that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here and being part of this lunch. Thank you, Bob, for being able to sponsor it, because this is a time that should never be forgotten.
Amen.